It is welcome to MazzaMedia. It's Mark, and we are live here on MazzaMedia. It is Sunday. I had a quick technical difficulty. I accidentally started the live stream for my Kelsey Fitzsimmons fundraiser next week. I'm like, okay, I think I'm in the wrong chat. So let me go back and restart the show. So here we are. We're live and ready to go to review the Karen Read Lifetime movie Accused, the Karen Read story, which aired last night on Lifetime. Definitely social media was a buzz last night. Twitter was a pretty fun place, to say the least, to talk about the movie. And, I got to say, yeah, Kyle Sharkey is like, yeah, Mazza started the Kelsey one by mistake. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's Sunday. A lot of good football games last night. The Patriots are on tonight at 8 p.m. playing the Chargers at Gillette Stadium. Looking forward to that. But this afternoon, we're going to go ahead and go through this movie that aired last night and kind of look at it piece by piece. Overall, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I ultimately enjoyed the movie. Obviously, it's a made-for-TV movie. It's not a high-budget movie at all. Obviously, it's not going to have movie stars that you know, movie stars that you've followed for years. It's not going to star, Ana de Armas and Ben Affleck and Tom Cruise and John Hamm and Margot Robbie and Meryl Streep. It's not going to star any big superstars. It's not going to be directed by James Cameron or Christopher Nolan or, other notable directors like Martin Scorsese. I get that. And another thing, yeah, there was no Sandra Bullock. I mean, there was no Sandra Bullock in the movie last night. If anybody was hoping to see Sandra Bullock last night, I'm sorry to say, Sandra Bullock was not in this movie at all, was not featured, did not in any way, shape, or form have anything to do with this movie. So there was no Sandra Bullock, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, it was shocking because I know that Sandra Bullock has never done a Lifetime movie in her life, but I figured that Sandra Bullock was probably, because I'm shocked. I mean, Sandra Bullock and her agent must have been absolutely disappointed that the dream role of a lifetime, they didn't get. Sandra Bullock finally in her career for the first time in probably 20 years didn't get a role that she wanted. There's no question that this would have been a bigger role for her than Demolition Man or Speed or The Blind Side or that movie where she has blindfolded, whatever the name of that movie was. There's so many of this congeniality, all these other movies she's made, of all the movies in her career, for Sandra Bullock, this was a shot at getting another Oscar. And this Accused, the Karen Read story, last night was that opportunity. And she didn't get the role she wanted. Because as we all know, there was a role that she could have played and probably done a great job in, but it went to another actress. It did. But that's the way it works. When it comes to being cast in movies, is you can't always get the roles that you want. Even if you're an Oscar winning actress like Sandra Bullock, it doesn't mean that you can necessarily just get any role in a Lifetime movie, even if it's a supporting character. Even if it's a character that just simply drives an SUV for 2 scenes, you may not necessarily be able to get that role. So that's just the way it works, and it's unfortunate. But, we would have loved to have seen Sandra Bullock in that movie, no question. But it just wasn't in the cards. But, they will make other variations of this movie. Elizabeth Banks. So, maybe there'll be an opportunity for Sandra Bullock to get that opportunity to appear in a Karen Read movie sometime in the future, because there's a lot of characters in that movie. So, we hope for the best. So yes, if you guys are looking for Sandra Bullock, she wasn't in the movie. Angelina Jolie wasn't in the movie either. So, it's just, again, there was no Woody Harrelson in the movie. I know that there were a lot of, there was a big need for bald characters. And Woody Harrelson, unfortunately, couldn't get a role. Jason Statham might have had an opportunity to play in the movie. He didn't have an opportunity. to play in this either. So there was a lot of big names that unfortunately got shut out. Weren't able to perform in this movie and have that opportunity of a lifetime to play in a Lifetime movie at long last, because we know all the biggest Hollywood actors like to play in Hollywood. And Vin Diesel was passed over. The Rock. I mean, The Rock used to have hair, and he buzzed his head just to be in the movie. But heck, what are you gonna do? So, like I said, I enjoyed the movie overall. I'm just humoring the audience here. We're going to have some fun. This movie was, I didn't take this movie all that seriously. This is a movie that had the Boston police actually at that house, which would be out of jurisdiction. It would only be the Canton Police Department or the state police that would have jurisdiction to investigate that. But for some reason, they had Boston police officers on the front lawn in that movie. And let's be honest, this is a movie that last night had the Boston Garden. No, not the Boston Garden you know and love now, but the actual Boston Garden that was torn down in 1995 or 1996 was actually in the movie last night. Yes, I'm serious. The Boston Garden was in the movie last night. Hold on. I'll get it up on the screen to show you guys this. So they took the billboard that was outside Gillette Stadium and they put it on the Boston Garden. But the problem was, I'm going to get this up on the screen here. The problem was, it was like a see it and miss it moment. That's the Boston Garden that was torn down. That's the Boston Garden that Bobby Orr played in the 70s. That's the Boston Garden that Larry Bird played in the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s. Okay, that's the same Boston Garden that Bob Cousy and Bill Russell played in. John Havlicek played in. Okay, Red Auerbach coached in that. Okay, this stood out to me like a sore thumb last night. I said to myself, I had it going on TV, and I actually stood up off the couch, paused it, rewound it, and had to take this photo. I just could not believe what I was seeing. Now, for all of us out there that are worried about inaccuracies or things not being told effectively or accurately, this right here tells you exactly what made-for-TV movies are all about. And somebody in their whatever state of mind they were in this is what happens, I guess, when Lifetime makes a movie, I guess, but how in the hell did nobody research to see if this was actually a living, breathing stadium in Boston? You know what this stadium is right now? It's a bunch of it's like a bunch of apartments and suites and all that. This building has been torn down 30 years ago. Okay, I was still in grade school when this building was torn down. This building was never even around in the 21st century. That's how crazy this was last night. So if we're looking for any level of accuracy, we got some accuracy, but sometimes it's these little details that they're just going to get wrong in a movie like this. Because again, this version of the Boston Garden has not existed for a long, long time. And they even have the old North Station train station going right into the building. that's even on the screen here, which is absolutely hilarious. But that's what you're going to get out of a made-for-TV movie. That's just the way it is. And that's just the way it's going to be, unfortunately. But yeah, that was kind of yeah, exactly. Old cars. I mean, come on, folks. I mean, who's not kicking themselves today and saying, hey, who did this? Come on, keep it historically accurate, especially when this is based on a true story. This movie was not based in 1994. Okay. And you just have old pictures of the garden, which is absolutely hilarious last night. So, like I said, overall, I had a fun time watching this movie. Obviously, you saw me active on X. I was commenting quite a bit on this throughout the night, and I just had a fun time with it. I'm not taking it too seriously. It's not going to be a microdots production where it's layered in accuracy, layered in great detail. Is going to tell you every single thing known to man about this. And I think collectively, as people like ourselves that have been that group of people that have absolutely followed this thing down to a T. You know, we're going to watch this movie last night and look at it and say to ourselves, well, they got that wrong. Yeah, that wasn't true. Yeah, they didn't say this there. That never happened. The Sally Port's not big enough. That's not actually the court. You know, it's you know, we're gonna pick it apart because we're the aficionados when it comes to this whole thing. We know every measurement, every scale, every color scheme, the height of every single person. We know if the pink shirts they might have had were off by a couple categories of pink. You know, we know all the intricacies of this entire thing. And when we watch a movie, these people that make this, they're going to do the best job they can. But I think at the end of the day, their goal is just to make a dramatic story that has a level of, you know, drama to it. You know, it's something that's going to appeal to their audience, you know, that typically will watch their movies. And it's more made for the lifetime general audience than it would be for the inner circle of the Karen Reed movement, which in essence is going to be, you know, obviously the viewership numbers last night in the New England area and specifically the Massachusetts area had to be through the roof last night. I'm sure, you know, the numbers in this state were through the roof. No question at all about it at all. It was, for us, it was a, you know, it was an event. I went out, I had quesadillas last night. I went out and I got taquitos, you know, which are like rolled up tacos. So I had that last night. I'm sitting down. I got cheese con queso. I got salsa and sour cream on a plate. I'm sitting down acting like it's a Super Bowl last night, you know, all locked down. I got the football game on too, you know, and I was just absolutely like locked in, you know, to watch this movie last night. I was at the gym, you know, in between my show and that movie. And I'm like watching my clock every 10 seconds. Like, I got to make sure I'm back in time and, you know, all that. But, you know, like I said, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed just kind of seeing a made-for-TV movie about it. I had fun with it. It was funny seeing some of the casting choices. There were some casting choices that were pretty solid. I thought Katie Cassidy was phenomenal, in my opinion, as Karen Reed. I enjoyed her performance. I thought she looked as much as Karen Reed as possible. The actress that played Jennifer McCabe, I thought was a very good casting choice. I thought the actor that played Paul O'Keefe was pretty solid. I thought the Paul Reed father was good enough. Not exactly the Paul Reed we all know and love, but good enough. I thought that the John O'Keefe casting I was not a fan of. You know, and I'm sure, you know, there's some other casting choices out there that were a little off. I didn't like the Michael Proctor casting at all. I didn't think the actor himself was a good actor. I just didn't think when I looked at the screen that I necessarily would say, oh, yes, that's Michael Proctor. You know, I thought maybe Tully. I thought maybe Trooper Paul. He would have been a better choice for. And, of course, Auntie Bev, which was just mentioned in the chat here, was obviously a very comedic choice where they simply threw a wig out of a I mean, she looked like Jimmy from Auntie Deb, who used to wear the wigs during the first trial. You know, they just threw a wig on her and, you know, had her sitting there. So that was pretty funny in aspects like that. I thought some of the dramatization was well done. You know, we're going to go through some pictures of the movie. I've taken a bunch of screen caps. That's probably why I accidentally went to my Kelsey Fitzsimmons fundraiser stream instead of this, was because I was literally taking screenshots right up to the last minute before I went live. I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, I'm not delaying this show. I gotta go. I'm sitting there taking screenshots and uploading them before I went live. You know, and like I said, you know, it's not going to be a perfect movie. It's not going to be, you know, like Patriots Day that they made with Mark Wahlberg, which was about the Boston Marathon bombing. You know, it had some things that were accurate, some things that were whatever. Mark Wahlberg's character in that movie was a composite character. He was not really, you know, a real person in that movie. He just played a couple variations of 3 or 4 people, and they just plugged them in key scenes. You know, that's what happens when you have a made-for-TV movie. They're just going to do what they can. Obviously, they have a limited budget. You know, their aspect is just to find movies and stories they think will have an appeal to their audience, throw something together, do it the best they can, but they're not going to go to the level of The Godfather or Christopher Nolan movie. You're not going to see Anne Hathaway and Rachel McAdams playing Karen and Jen. You're not going to see Matt Damon or Mark Wahlberg or Leonardo DiCaprio playing Alan Jackson or Turtleboy. That's not what's going to happen. George Clooney's not going to play David Yannetti, in a Lifetime movie. But it is what it was. It is what it was. I think one of the predominant things I noticed about this movie is I stand by the fact, the thought that this story just does not fit into a 2-hour window. In no way, shape, or form is this story fit for 2 hours at all. You saw what happened last night. They really predominantly focused on the first trial. Then they kind of took a moment to pivot to the second trial and then finished out the story in about 2 to 3 minutes. After that, it's one of those things. There's only so much time where you really can't go down to the nitty gritty. You can't really dig in to the maximum level of story that this is. And that's kind of what the issue was with this movie is not necessarily a fault of the producers and the production company or writers themselves. It's just that this story is better fit. I've said this before. I've said I don't want to see a movie. I want to see like what they do on FX, which is American Crime Story. They've done American Crime Stories for O.J. Simpson. I think they did one for Aaron Hernandez. They did one for Bill Clinton. Like a 10 to 12 episode series, where you can break things down more throughout that series and get into more of the depths of the story and actually tell, both trials. Or maybe you could do 6 episodes, a few episodes before the first trial, 3 to 4 episodes on the first trial, 3 to 4 episodes on the second trial, and kind of do a lot of storytelling in that manner. And that would be probably a more efficient way to tell it. But unfortunately, with the 2 hour, not even 2 hours. I mean, it was a 2 hour block, but it was also, commercials got to air. So you're looking at maybe 25 to 30 minutes of commercials. The movie in its entirety was probably an hour and 30 minutes. That's about it. So there's only so much time they really have to squeeze all of that. When I got later and later in the movie, I think it was about like 9:50 at night or 9:45 at night. And I kind of started to see this on Twitter as well. It's like, is this going to go to a part 2, or are they just going to cut it past a certain point, then go to the end? And that's exactly what they did. So it was, in essence, a very confined storytelling of it. I would still argue in their favor that they did get quite a bit in there. I mean, they got quite a bit of detail in there in the time that they had. They sufficiently covered what happened the opening night, when everything happened, and then the next day, and then they had a lot of the key moments were in there, Karen's arrests and all that, which we're going to go over throughout this show. And they did. I'd say they did they did a sufficient enough job to get people a 101, maybe even a 201. I'd say 101 level understanding, but not enough to really get everybody to fully understand and fully grasp exactly the in-depth story. But I would say this, if people watched that had never heard about this last night and then turned around and started to watch videos online, well, that's good, because now that's more people that are going to start to research this story and get to figure it out. And that's obviously a good thing. Now, let me get a drink of water from my collection cup here, because there's no tail light in this. It's just water. Now, I would say this about the movie is that Lifetime, obviously, when they make, this is not, obviously they've made true crime stories before. Obviously, they've done that, right? They obviously, like any other company out there, would have a legal team, legal counsel in their studio, or whoever owns Lifetime, that would counsel them on what they can and they cannot talk about. Now, this movie last night really stuck to the facts of the case, or things that could factually, without a doubt, be proven, right? So if Michael Proctor was at a wedding with the Albert family, that was factual information, because those images were actually proven. So they actually had that scene in the movie, right? Now, Dennis Sweeney, what's going on? Hope you're doing well, sir. Hope Brenda's doing good, too. She does a great job at the Canton Select Boards. They should have had you guys in the movie. But they can only say so much on camera, right? So when they're making this movie, they can't get, like, for example, they can't talk about what a lot of people talk about on Twitter or on YouTube, where people start to say, we believe this person did it or that person did it. You know, they can talk about in the movie like Hoss Long to Die in Cold, because that search was actually verified. It was actually a part of the trial. You know, they can actually do that in the movie without, you know, because they just can't go out there, the studio, and just start saying, you know, this person did it and that person, you know, and then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, the studio is getting hit with lawsuits left and right. You know, so they have to, you know, obviously this movie was very measured. You know, it was capped with a certain level of how far they would go to push that envelope. And the two biggest things I saw they talked about, again, was Michael Proctor's affiliation with that family based on actual pictures, and then the Google search and searches that were there based on actual data that was presented during trial. But they didn't actually get into anything along the lines of, was John O'Keefe killed inside the house? Was John O'Keefe's body taken outside the house? Was John O'Keefe's body left to die in the cold? There was none of that I recall. The only thing I fear when I watched this movie last night was that I got so busy tweeting that even today, when I was watching a little bit of it before I went live, there was a couple little small scenes that I watched I didn't even see last night because I was so busy looking at the TV, then tweeting, you know, and I was missing little details as well. So I caught most of it, it appears, but, you know, if I'm at any point miss something, just say it in the chat. I'll be subject to correction. I'm going to watch this movie again in its entirety as well. No question about that. Now, Nefarious says the movie was rushed. I agree, and I think that's the byproduct of this being a very large and grandiose story, as well as this story having so much content and context to it that it's really tough to talk all the way through it, talk about as much as they'd like to, explore it as much as they'd like, and really get to that level of satisfaction, which again, you know, that gets to the point where, you know, maybe like a 3-hour Netflix style movie would have sufficed, twice as long, you know, probably would be able to pull it off. And yes, David Cassidy's daughter, David Cassidy was in the Partridge Family, and she was convincing as well. I thought she did a really good job. No question, she was, you know, they focused on, you know, obviously she was the main character. When they cast her, they did a thorough job of making sure they had an actress that, I mean, I'll be honest, I think Elizabeth Banks is going to have to put on a heck of a performance in comparison to Katie Cassidy. I do, because I thought Katie Cassidy did, you know, a really sufficient job at portraying Karen. I thought she really nailed the scenes where she was, I guess, you know, trying to understand reality and a shifting reality around her, the emotions of losing John, the mystery of why John's gone, dealing with the transition of how that O'Keefe family saw her, and now they went from people that knew her to people that now believe that she killed John, and then dealing with the reaction to the cops, the police coming after her, the David Unetti scenes, you know, when David Unetti let her know that, hey, look, they're going to come arrest you. They were going to subpoena your emails, your texts, all that stuff. They're going to come after. I thought her reaction, Katie Cassidy's scenes in that movie were done well. Now, yes, that's been said today as well. They over-sexualized Karen Read. I think that's what you call a creative decision by Lifetime, where they're trying to appeal to a certain audience, where they try to suddenly, you know, sexualize or romanticize certain aspects of their movie to try to appeal to an audience. So I think that was definitely a what you'd call a network sensationalizing stuff to appeal to their audience, where they're taking things out of context or portraying someone in a manner that would not really be what we'd consider acceptable. And I think that's what that network did last night when they did that. They're trying to appeal to their audience, because I even tweeted about that at one point. I mean, maybe in a couple minutes before that scene or right around the time of that scene, where I said, oh, this is the Lifetime movie portion of this Lifetime movie, because suddenly it kind of felt like what a Lifetime movie is, what I understand it to be, which is a lot of relationship drama, a lot of fighting, sexual scenes, whatnot, what have you. And that's kind of really where that went for about a 2-minute period there. And that was kind of like when I was like, ugh, like, because I wanted to get back to the nitty gritty of the story and all that. But you kind of saw that as well. And that's, again, that's your studio. That's them taking their creative control or creative liberties with the subject matter, which is always based on a true story, not exactly a exact portrayal of everyone, which we're going to get to throughout this program today as well, because we're going to talk about some of the casting choices. I have a presentation of screenshots ready for you guys as well that we're going to go over, and we're going to talk about that and kind of give our review, piece by piece as we're going to talk about. But I would say for a Lifetime movie, I would say it was solid. I'd say on a Lifetime, made for TV movie level, it was solid. In my opinion, people immediately disagreed with me on Twitter last night. I think I actually pulled that tweet down because I was like, oh, no, I don't want to get like an influx of people like, it's not solid, Mazza. Shut up, Mazza. Shut up. Shut up. So like, I'm going to pull that tweet. I'm like, let's just get it down. I mean, I don't want to catch that heat. I'm like, no, I'm not dealing with that. I don't want to catch the smoke. I'm like, I'm pulling the tweet. I don't want to deal with it. But I did think on a made for TV movie level, I thought it was solid. In terms of actually on a movie level of actually being, good or bad, I thought it was a very lackluster movie, right? I would not say this was so like I said, on a made for TV movie level, solid. On a standard movie level, not so good. And on a factual level, based on what actually happened, not so good. So I'd say it's like a 4.5 on a standard movie level. I'd say it was about a 7 on a made for TV movie level. So that's how I feel about it. So I think there's two ways of looking at it. There's the how dare you, Mazza? Made for TV movie, solid. Standard movie, not so good. Because I mean, like I said, this was not The Godfather last night. This was not American Beauty. This was not Fight Club. This was not, Inception. This was not $1 Million Baby last night. Not by no means. But for a made for TV movie, I mean, I'd say it was solid for made for TV. I would, because it's not, like I said, you have to, there's a different level to fan films, made for TV movies, Hollywood movies, and then Oscar-worthy movies. So that's what I have to say, because I have to rate it a little bit differently, so there we go. So I'm going with a 7 on a made for TV movie level. I'm going with like a 4.5 on a Hollywood movie level, and all that. So that's my ratings. That's my take. You either like it or hate it. She's like, Mazza 7, please. Yeah. Oh, well, again, come on, Rhonda. Rhonda, come on. Help me out here, Rhonda. Come on. Help me out. Work with me. Yeah, exactly. But if you're looking for the documentary, quality, like all the details and facts, this certainly didn't have it. It was just like I said, it was like your dramatized, romanticized movie, and all that. Now, we're going to talk about, actually, I'll talk about now because I don't think I did not get all the screenshots I wanted because I was pressed for time. I kind of had the idea at 11 o'clock, I should take screenshots of the movie. And then, of course, I'm like last minute just getting ready for the show. And I'm like, I didn't get all the shots I wanted. But they gave Lucky Loughran hair. So they gave Lucky Loughran hair, which was, come on, they had a wig on Auntie Bev. I mean, this is where we get to the lackluster level of this, that it's just like, come on, it's just, you got to have people. It's okay, Rhonda, you're good. You're good. It's all right. You have to look at everything like with the inaccuracies of all this. And that was like, they have certain characters that, they don't have to like Bill Reed, for example. Let's take Bill Reed. You don't have to have Bill Reed look exactly like Bill Reed, but you have to have him look somewhat comparable. And I would say that he did. Like, I'd say that the actor who played Bill Reed was passable as Bill Reed. The guy that played Lucky Loughran, it's like they just interviewed an actor that was in his age demographic, put him on camera, and it's like, no, aesthetically, that's not how he looks. You expect them to get the hair, the facial hair right. They had Alan Jackson, clean shaven. You know, you expect those things to be accurate. You don't, you know, it's like if you're casting Carrie Roberts and she has dark brown or black hair and suddenly she has blonde hair in the movie, that's not accurate. You know what I'm saying? It's not an accurate conveying of that individual. So this movie was layered with inaccuracies, things that were incorrect, and aesthetically were just not right at all. So that's definitely one of the facts of last night's movie. But like I said, I kind of had fun with this last night. You know, there was moments where I got a little bit fired up again. There was actually a moment where I said, I was watching, I'm like, geez, no wonder why I started streaming about this. Like, I kind of get so, you know, angry again, especially when the cops started showing up at her house. I was just like, oh my goodness, I got so fired up again. You know, it just, like I said, it was kind of good in that level of the movie. But like I said, if you're looking for something that was accurate down to the level, not the movie to watch. If you're looking for something that, you know, had everybody looking at pretty much exactly how they should, not going to happen. Not going to be, not going to, this was not the movie. This was not, you know, and God help when the Hollywood movie with Elizabeth Banks comes out, that's going to have a level of inaccuracies too. And again, I think that comes back to us just being the aficionados. We're the people that followed this case every single day for the last 3 or 4 years, 2 to 3 years, whatever. You know, we know all the mundane details. We know how people look like, and that's kind of it. So that's that. So let's transition here. Let's get to about 30 minutes for an introduction. Let's actually get to the slides on this movie last night. And let me get a drink from the my Taillight Collection cup here. Good to have the solo cup available and ready to go. So, all right, 2-hour movie. And, you know, like I said, mixed reactions on this last night. Some of the opinions on Twitter were outright hilarious. So we have the banner here. And so the movie kind of kicks off with Karen Reed in an interview. And I figured probably that's how this movie was going to start. And it did, where it was some kind of like either her walking out of court with kind of like a, I'm sure you're wondering how I got here type of, you know, movie intro, or let me tell you my story, or, you know, a reflective telling of how everything happened. And that's exactly how they did this last night, which I thought was a good way to do it. You know, kind of introduce you to the character, portraying Karen Reed, having her tell her story about how everything got there. And again, this was most definitely telling the whole story through the lens of Karen Reed last night, which I thought was very good. And again, I thought Katie Cassidy did a good job. Now, I did like this shot a lot. A cold, bitter, dark look at Canton, you know, welcome to Canton, covered in snow. You know, it kind of really set the atmosphere up that this is going to be about a town. You know, it's a wintry night. It's a dark night. Get ready for all kinds of trouble and chaos to brew. Here you go. I kind of like this introduction here. Like I said, not an Oscar-winning movie. You know, obviously lackluster in a lot of ways, but I thought that there were some things they definitely did throughout the movie that I thought were pretty good. That they had some pretty solid ideas. Britt Happens in the house. Go on, Britt. Hope you're doing good. We'll be on the. I'll get to you about the Kelsey Fitzsimmons fundraiser next week as well, after I find out what day that Patriots game is next week. All right, so yeah, they did a good job here, I thought, establishing it, and then they go to C.F. McCarthy's, and if you've ever been outside that area, you know they don't have a pine. I think it's almost like pine tree bush or whatever that's out front there, but this is okay. I mean, for us, we're going to look at this and say, that's not really there. That's not really the actual location. There's not a barber shop there. But, you know, for people that are watching this that have no idea about the actual area or what happened, you know, this is just basically studio dressing to establish that this is going right into C.F. McCarthy's to start talking about the what had gone down. So nice introductory shot there. Again, you know, not exactly accurate, but, you know, sufficient enough. All right, this is where we get our first shot of John O'Keefe. Again, they have his hat and his hoodie on here. You know, they had him, you know, they did a good job in this movie, I thought, of having characters dressed up essentially as how they were in real life to the best of their ability. They did a good job in their wardrobe department, getting, you know, people to look, you know, exactly from at least a clothing aspect, how they looked. And then, they also, I didn't like, I'm not going to say I don't like this actor as a person. I just didn't think that he was, in my opinion, I just didn't think he had John's swagger. I just didn't think he had John's toughness, in my opinion. And I just thought he was, I don't know, I just wasn't a fan of this actor in this role. I just thought he was someone they kind of said, okay, he looks like John enough. Yeah, he can pass off as, we can pass him off as John, dress him up, throw him on camera. There you go. But I didn't like this portrayal all that much, quite honestly. But I guess, they're just going to have actors that they think can play the role. But I did like the way that they kind of went right into C.F. McCarthy's in the movie. They went right into it, talked about, because this was kind of really the earliest point of the night. That is really a good starting point in talking about everything that happened that night. It's just kicking right off at C.F. McCarthy's. It was, really to me, a central, this location and the waterfall were the two most pivotal points leading up to everything that happened, right? Because it talks about Karen and John. You have the introduction of Karen and John together on screen for the first time. And then, it also brings in alcohol, right? So intoxication was a huge bit of this case. Obviously, the jury found her guilty of DUI. I still disagree with that charge to this day. But again, I don't think she drank to the level that they said she did as well. At all, because obviously she drove from C.F. McCarthy's to the waterfall to 34 Fairview, and 34 Fairview to One Meadow Lane without any incident other than the incident that was alleged to have happened, which was the allegation that she had backed into John O'Keefe and killed him. So I didn't agree with that portion of the movie being discussed about it when they showed her like drinking constantly. But like I said, from a writing standpoint, from a movie standpoint, this was a good starting point for, getting into the live portion of the story, introducing characters, really showing them on good terms here, really showing no argument, which was accurate as based on the security camera from C.F. McCarthy's. There was no argument here. Everything was peachy keen, and they were having essentially a good time. So, this is when things start to go wrong, obviously. But again, I thought this was a good entry point. We then get to the waterfall. So they go to the waterfall where they meet some wonderful, wonderful friends of theirs that I'm sure everyone watching this show right now is just an absolute fan of and adores. All of our favorite people, no question, were featured here at the waterfall. But again, this is establishing kind of the new characters here that have been the subject of many people that are Karen Reed supporters believing had more to do with it than what police reports have shown, many news reports have shown, and that's where they start to meet up with all of these folks here at the waterfall in Canton for some drinks. Now, Higgins was not featured in this, so we didn't see Higgins in this unless he was there, unless that's him with that hoodie on the right over there. Maybe that is him. But that, it's Brian Albert there with the black winter hat and the vests preserver there, the black shoulders and the orange tan body of the vest. To the right is a man actually in a hoodie right there. That could actually be Higgins as featured in the movie. So, but he was not a character. There was no, like you've seen on Microdots where there's a confrontation between John and him. This is not featured in this movie at all. And again, they kind of stood away from, any level of cover-up theories, framing theories. They didn't really get too much into. They really kind of focused it on Proctor, what Proctor's done, what's happened to Proctor. That's how the movie portrayed itself. They didn't really ever look at any of the individuals here and start to dissect and see if maybe they had their own theory on were these individuals involved. Did anything happen in 34 Fairview? That was never really discussed at all in this movie. They just essentially showed them as people that they knew that lived in the house, and that was it. They did show Jen, in the first trial as, kind of with the same temperament that she had in that first trial, so they had that accurate. But it doesn't really get too much into any possible suggestions that there was a confrontation between John and Higgins here, as shown on camera, featured on microdots. And it really doesn't feature, other than maybe naming a few characters a few times, it doesn't really get into breaking down who these people are. The homeowner, I don't even know if they even mentioned that the homeowner was a Boston police officer. I can't even recall if that was actually said. Hope you're doing well, Sarah. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for everybody tuning in. Please be sure to like the video and subscribe, because as content creator, we always have to say like and subscribe. So like and subscribe. Thank you, guys. So they kind of showed this, but I like how they put this in the movie. They showed C.F. McCarthy's. They showed you the waterfall. They introduced some of the characters here that were portraying real-life individuals. So I thought that was pretty solid done. But again, not to our liking, obviously. As people that are free Karen Reed, who believe that Karen Reed was framed and John O'Keefe's murder was covered up. So we move on here. This is Brian here. And again, they show him, looks quite a bit different than he does in real life. And they don't really, a little bit of dialogue for him in the movie. But like I said, I don't even recall if they actually had him mentioned as a police officer at all. I don't recall if that was actually even brought in to discussion in this movie that I can recall, unless I missed a small detail or two. But they kind of showed him quick, a quick bit of dialogue, and then they kind of moved right along here. So it looks like, yeah, they didn't even mention what people are saying. So yeah, he looks like a fisherman, the character, the way he's dressed. He looks like he just got back from Gloucester after catching 500 pounds of bass or haddock. All right, so then we move on. This is the first image we see of Jen here, and I actually thought this actress did a very good job portraying her. They kind of they put did a good casting here to have an actress play this role. Obviously, this was going to be a character that was going to be on the stand later in the movie, and was going to have to portray a character that was very much animated to a degree during the first trial, and also was prominent in finding John's body. So this was a character role that needed to have an actress that was able to act very well, obviously. And I thought this actress gave a very good performance in this particular role as well. And again, I think that one of the things this movie did get was they kind of had these characters for the most part dressed up with hair, at least not all of them, but some of the more prominent characters did at least look like, as much as they could like themselves, subtracting from other characters that did not quite look like themselves, but not bad. So this is the first shot at 34 Fairview Road. This is kind of I thought this scene was very well dramatized. They had, it was night. It was a distant shot. It was dark. It was a lonely type of shot. They had the wind. They had the snow. They had the vehicles in the parking lot. They also had some eerie music playing as well. I thought they did a good job, establishing this location, because it is, at the end of the day, regardless of whatever happens before and after, this is the absolute apex of the scene and everything that's going to happen. This is where John O'Keefe's life ends. This is where the story, everything that's said to believe that Karen Reed did this is conceived. This is where Karen Reed, believing in her innocence, is the fight begins. This is really, like I said, the hub of everything that is to come. And they did a good job, I thought. Again, like I said, this is why sometimes I'll give this movie maybe more favorable credit than some others, just because I thought that they did a good job, establishing like scenes like this. I thought were well done. I think that was about as well done as you could possibly get. But, we're going to talk about the snow and everything as well, because some people were arguing for that too. So they go inside the house briefly. This is before John is dropped off. This is before John enters the home. What they do here is they establish in the movie that there are people in the house, more than 2 or 3, obviously. I thought this was a good shot, just to kind of show you that there was an active party going on, which is later, discussed in court. How many people were on the stand? What did you see that night? What did you see when you left? This was all stuff that was important to show in the movie. So I did like that they kind of talked about this as well. Moving forward, this is kind of really an eerie shot for all of us, and it doesn't matter, what happens before or after. This is kind of the moment where you're really looking at the screen and saying, "Don't get out of the car, don't go in the house." That's kind of this moment here in this movie where Karen's dropping off John, and both of their lives are going to forever change at this particular moment. This is basically it right here. John's life is going to end. And obviously it's been heavily debated as to what happened. People like myself believe he entered the house. He was basically killed, obviously, and left to die in the snow. That's what I believe. Even though for me, I have no way of effectively saying who did it, who was involved. There's not enough evidence to make that a judgment. But I think there's enough evidence to suggest that Karen Reed did not do this, right? So there's not enough evidence to show that Karen Reed did this. There is evidence to show that John O'Keefe died at that very location, but there's not enough evidence to show that Karen Reed did it. And you saw ARCA and their reenactments during the second trial clearly established that a motor vehicle could not do this. You saw experts like ARCA and Dr. Mary Russell clearly established that this not only happened, but it looked like a dog, in fact, attacked them. And we know that there was a dog that was inside that house. So that's where many like ourselves easily theorize, and so many folks online, thousands of people, believe that he went in that house, was killed in that house, and then his body was taken outside. Apple Health data shows that he went up 3 flights of stairs. Apple also shows they went right into the direction of that house. The wounds, according to Dr. Murray Russell, who is a very decorated expert, also show those are pattern wounds. Those clearly appear to be dog bites. Additionally, taillight could never cause those wounds. So again, all of the evidence is absolutely in the favor that Karen Reed did not do this, and that John O'Keefe went in that house and was more than certainly killed and left to die in the cold. And again, I don't see enough evidence based on evaluation and my own personal evaluation, other people's evaluations that's been submitted, as well as expert testimony in both trials. I don't see enough information to suggest that Karen Reed did this in any way, shape, or form, and that Karen Reed is, in fact, the innocent woman that we've always believed her to be. And that's the bottom line. And it'll be interesting to see if Adam Deitch, if elected as DA, will reopen the investigation into this particular case to determine if we can find if someone else is, in fact, responsible for this, as so many of us believe. So that's my thoughts on this. But this scene, again, is very eerie because, again, there's high levels of circumstance here for both Karen and John. John's life is going to come to an end in the most tragic of fashion. Karen Reed is going to be in a multi-year fight for her life to this very day that is still continuing in civil suits. And I'll say that defense funds for multiple folks are in the chat as well, including Karen Reed's civil defense fund. If you'd like to donate to Karen Reed to help her in her fight, that link is in the description of this video. But again, this is a very eerie scene for sure right here, where everything is going to change for both of these individuals. And I thought they from a camera aspect, they did a good job with the camera shot here, showing what was about to happen. All right, so we got this next scene here. This is Jen, Carrie, and Karen arriving at 34 Fairview Road and locating John's body. Now, this was heavily contested in a lot of posts on X last night. And this was one of the points where people start to point towards the inaccuracies of what happened. And that's basically this giant snowbank here that looks like Will Ferrell is about to have a snowball fight in Central Park in the movie Elf. Obviously, at this particular point, there was not that level of snow. And that's, yeah, exactly, Scott, because of the legality of all of it. And, they have a legal team, obviously, that's going to say, nope, you can't talk about this. Yeah, and there were no snowbanks that morning at all, none at all. Again, I think this is one of those things where they like a lot of times, like television studios, movie studios, they tend to dress things up a lot more. They tend to, add more, like sometimes it'd be like, add more blood, add more gore, add more drama. They kind of, well, there was this amount of snow. Well, add more snow. They want to dramatize this and make it look like, because when you look at this visually, if you're not someone that knows anything about this story like us, when you look at this, it's like, oh my goodness, this is absolutely intense. Look at that snow. This is, it's a way to dress up the movie scene and make it look more, dramatic and more intense, while sacrificing actual accuracy. This is what you call taking liberties with the facts of the case, is just dressing it up, all that stuff. It's just, oh my goodness. It was just typical movie nonsense. You know what I'm saying? It's just, they do that all the particular time. Like I said, Mark Wahlberg in the movie Patriots Day was not, like in the movie Patriots Day, they had Mark Wahlberg's character. He was at the Boston Marathon's bombing. He was at the, he was at the Watertown shooting. He was at the arresting of one of the brothers there. Mark Wahlberg's character was everywhere in that movie because he was a composite character. It was done for drama. But this is just, my goodness, they could have gotten out skis and snowboards at this point if they wanted to. That's how ridiculous this is in terms of aesthetics. That much is for sure. But again, I think they turn around though and also nail certain scenes like this, certain shots like this, where they catch, this 3-shot of the ladies that were out there that night, Karen, Carrie, and Jen. They, establish them at the scene for the most part. This is very similar to what you see in footage that was played in court. And again, I think this is one of the scenes again where Katie Cassidy really drives it home, really, has that shocked, true shock and horror look on her face, absolutely horrified at what's happened to John, but also at the same time trying to quantify exactly what the hell's happened here. And I thought that this was one of the better scenes in the movie in terms of, like when I critique Katie Cassidy's performance, this is one of those scenes where I look at her performance and say, I thought she did a good job with this. This is pretty much about as accurate of a portrayal as Karen Reed as you're going to see. And even the look, again, the expression on her face here is very well done in my particular opinion. All right, next up, this is Karen Reed now at the hospital. This is when she's section 12. And she's now at the hospital here, and they're taking her blood. And she asks, why are you taking my blood for? And as we find out, they're obviously trying to get her blood alcohol level. Unbeknownst to her, there's also now an investigation as to what's going on. And, Karen Reed at this point is already being eyed as a suspect, unbeknownst to her. And they're doing that blood draw. And, I've done many shows, in the past about Karen's blood alcohol level. And I just think that this blood, at the time of this blood draw, was hours after the fact. Additionally, I felt that, she drove, like I said earlier in the show, she drove around Canton quite a bit that night. And then there's no verification of the drinks that she had, that every single one of them were alcoholic, that every single glass that she was served, that she actually drank in its entirety. That information was never really, in my opinion, sufficiently presented in court, or sufficiently presented at all. And you have basically an estimated blood alcohol level. And that's, and then Glenn Masseuse says, hey, look, they never ran a BAC until mid-2023. So, yeah, that was, a scene here. But I thought, again, Katie Cassidy portrays Karen really well here as someone that's trying to both cope and both comprehend an active situation that is a life-altering moment, because at the end of the day, this was her boyfriend. She loved John O'Keefe. And as she said, no one fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than she did. Scott McGinnis, let's read a comment from him. The closest this movie is going to get got to going there regarding any third-party stuff was the scene with AJ seeing Officer John O'Keefe's dog-bitten arm photos and being convinced Karen Reed was being framed. Exactly. Very good. And a lot of people think Katie did a good job. I like this comment here from Maria. She goes, looks like they spent their entire budget on the snow. That's funny. Oh, my goodness gracious. Yeah. But they, they got some things right. Some of these scenes had some inaccuracies, obviously. But, they're just trying to tell. At the end of the day, I guess Lifetime's interest in this is they know that Karen Reed's story is a hot topic. They know it's a big story. They know they're going to get viewership. They know it's like if they do a movie on it or a show or whatever, it's going to get viewership. They want to go after stories like this that they think, because this is a story that will connect with their audience. Man and woman, one of them dies tragically. There's a mystery. Karen Reed's framed. It's your classic, tragic romance, crime mystery story, cover-ups. It has a lot of interest that people are going to get into. And obviously Lifetime's going to seize the opportunity. I'm not criticizing them for it. I'm just saying Lifetime's going to seize the opportunity when they see a movie like this that has that kind of appeal to make a movie about this. And that's exactly what they did. Moving forward here, we see Bill O'Reed for the very first time in this movie. I thought this actor was sufficiently cast as Bill Reed. Obviously not the Bill Reed we know and love, but at the end of the day, I thought he portrayed Bill Reed what I would call serviceably. It's like people say about Val Kilmer when he played Batman. Val Kilmer was not necessarily Christian Bale or Michael Keaton, but Val Kilmer was what you would call a serviceable Batman, meaning he played Batman and Bruce Wayne. He got the job done. He was believable. It was a good enough performance. And that's how I felt about the actor. Janet is actually in the movie. I have some screenshots for everybody. I'll show you guys that later on. But I was able to locate Janet Reed in this movie, and we'll present that to you guys later. Sarah, be creative. We'll get that for you. No worries. But again, I thought this actor, played the fatherly role for Karen in this movie. The actor did a good enough job, serviceable job. I was satisfied with his performance. But again, if you're looking for a spot, rest in peace, Val Kilmer for sure. One of my favorite actors as well. Tombstone, Top Gun, just a lot of Heat, obviously, as well. Janet's there, no speaking lines, correct. But I thought this actor was fine. Again, I think that's sometimes tough for us too, because we know these people so well that we don't necessarily, sometimes it's tough to say, oh, that's supposed to be this person, that's supposed to be that person. But not every single time is it going to be an absolute, like Katie Cassidy, for example, I thought was a home run casting choice, looked the role, acted to the role, but this actor played Bill Reed again. Good enough. Thumbs up or thumbs down? I would say middle of the road. Like I said, I gave it a 7 based on a made-for-TV movie level. I gave it a 4.5 based on an overall movie level. Maybe I'll just say like a 5.5. Maybe we'll just put it right in the middle. I know. Heat's one of my favorite movies. I watch that every so often. Love Heat. Love Heat a lot. Love Heat a lot. You got it. Who, if anyone, was driving the ambulance would have been me spitting out my drink. I was already laughing through most of the movie. And Scott, we didn't have a Scott McGinnis character in the movie last night. We did not have a Scott McGinnis character in the movie at all. We were looking for you, Scott, to have you portrayed in the movie, but it did not happen. Next slide here. All right, so here we go. We got our solo cups here. This is Michael Proctor on the right. So yesterday's show, we were very active in the chat. We were trying to debate who this guy on the right was supposed to be. It turned out to be Michael Proctor. And for me, I thought he looked more like Tully. Many others thought he looked like Trooper Paul. And that's it. Oh, my goodness. We have a super chat coming in from US Lily 80. Mazza, you have a pure soul. Please never change that. For all the boots on the ground, for all the boots on the ground, bless your hearts. Thank you for standing for justice. It proves that united, we can all help make changes and get justice. Well, US Lily 80, thank you so much for that super chat. Thank you for your kind words, as well as your kind words about boots on the ground. No question, when we watched this movie yesterday, that boots on the ground were heavily portrayed throughout this movie. Boots on the ground were people that were, unlike myself, that can only be there once every so often, or even attend a national stand-up once every so often. There were boots on the ground that were consistently out there, consistently, raising awareness, getting T-shirts, making signs. Scott McGinnis is in the chat. Scott McGinnis deserves a medal for this. Dennis and Brenda deserve a medal. Tom CPU, Dina, all the people that were out there. When we look back at all this, regardless of, wherever we all stand these days or whatever, all of these people, many people I don't even know the names of. Peter Murphy, just all these people that were out there all the time. And there's people out there in Dedham to this very day that are out there raising awareness. All the people that were out there in Cape Cod, weekend after weekend after weekend, outside that Dunkin' Donuts near the Rotary, that were out there making sure that when people went over that Bourne Bridge, they got to see those signs every weekend. This was an incredible effort by a lot of people. Boots on the ground deserve all the love and respect that can ever be given to them. I've seen these people in the highest of heats, in the lowest of cold temperatures, fighting and fighting and fighting all over this particular state. And people did a great job. And everybody made a difference. Everybody participated. And I love every single one of these people for what they did. It was a wonderful coming together of people in a tremendous fight. And when we see Karen Reed walk out of that courthouse as an innocent woman, we all played a part in helping Karen Reed in her fight. We all played a role in fighting for justice in our state. When you see changes of police chiefs, when you see potentially changes of DAs, we've made that change. Select board changes. You've made that change. We've made that change. We've all done it to what we could do to the best of our levels, from varying levels. Someone like myself couldn't be out there often at all, but could get out there occasionally. We'll just do content stuff because this is my best way of presenting my voice and participating. Rita Lombardi, who was just mentioned. Rita Lombardi, front lines for the longest of times, always fighting, doing a great job, did all these people. And, that was what happened. And, this was a moment in time. And, everybody did a great job. And U.S. Lily, thank you for your chat. Thank you for your great words about me. Also, thank you for your mention for Boots on the Ground here and everything everybody did. And great job. Just absolutely fantastic. U.S. Lily also says, I hope to one day get to stand with them to have a cup of coffee. Absolutely. That'd be awesome. I'd love to see you have that opportunity and meet those folks. Not sure where you're from. You don't have to say your town, but maybe your state. If you don't mind. But, you don't even have to say your state. Forget that. But, yeah, hopefully you get to get out here one time and meet these folks. Let's see what Scott had to say about the signs here. Speaking of the movie, depictions of Free Karen Reed boots, the signs out there during trial times is incorrect. Buffer zones presented that. Yeah, that was another inaccuracy. Oh, that's good to hear. Well, that's very good to hear. Boots on the ground, some love there. Cheers to all. Very good stuff there. But yeah, okay, so thank you for that super chat, U.S. Lily. And again, boots on the ground, everybody that's been out there, everything everybody did. Content creators, everything you did, just fantastic. But here we have the solo cup. So Proctor's character shows up and he's like, you guys are using solo cups? That was pretty funny. But yeah, we had to have the red solo cup. I mean, the red solo cups, were obviously a prominent feature in the trial. I think the one thing that could have been added, they couldn't obviously add Stop and Shop bags without getting permission from Stop and Shop, but maybe they could have just used like grocery market bags or something like that, maybe like plain brown bags. Maybe they could have used instead to present that, the collection of that taillight. Now, yes, the leaf blower was something people didn't see in the movie. You did not see the leaf blower. You didn't see them walking around the property like they were clearing the lines at Gillette Stadium during the snow game. You didn't see any of that at all in any way, shape, or form in the movie. The leaf blower did not have its moments last night. The leaf blower was a big-time character or a big-time prop in all of this and did not make an appearance. We got the red solo cups, though. They made an appearance in this movie. Some things about the house. The house in the background, not bad. Not a bad house. I don't know what house they used. I don't know if they built this house from the ground up, but they definitely, the leaf blower has filed a suit against Lifetime TV for being replaced by 2 manual shovels. Glare in the house. He streamed this last night, which was I didn't get a chance to watch that, but I had some TVs going. I had the movie on and I had the football game on mute. I'm going to be watching the Jaguars and Bills after this. I know they're getting started right now. But yeah, this house, this setting here is good. Like, that's where I give, even Scott's like, yeah, it's pretty close. This is where I give a lot of credit to the producers. Like, maybe they got some things wrong, but, other times they got things pretty accurate or close to accurate to the best they could. Like, this house is sufficient for the movie. They got the flagpole there. Now, the flagpole is a little further back. I don't remember the flagpole being that far back, but, and it's not even in that area, but that's maybe one of the inaccuracies. And then, they got some pine trees back there, so that's not too bad. But again, not exactly accurate, but I'd say, again, is it good enough because this is just simply a movie that's more focused on, because again, this movie is more focused on the dramatic aspect of storytelling than they are on the actual details that we all focus on as well. Thank you, Dana, for that comment. Appreciate it. Yeah, to the left, closer to the street. Exactly. It was more to the left. This is in the background here. Just like, yeah, put it in there. It's just put that right in front of the house right there. Sure, that will work. But again, here's another inaccuracy. I don't know if you guys can see it on screen. That officer, his badge, not his police badge, but his patch, says Boston Police on it. Not Canton, not Massachusetts State Police, but apparently a Boston police officer in the world of Lifetime movies has jurisdiction in the town of Canton to just go right to that house and start collecting, taillight in a solo cup. So that's what we've learned from this movie last night. So yeah, you have a couple of glaring inaccuracies here. Again, poor research on the producers of the movie, but I think that's something we'll notice, but I don't think it's something that people that have no clue about this story will notice. So if you had your moms and pops, brothers and sisters watching the movie last night, they're just going to tune in and they're probably not even going to look at that patch that says Boston Police. They're probably not going to notice that the flagpole's in the wrong location. They're not going to, and the way it is. It's like when I think of Chicago. I think Chicago's a state, but it's really the state of Illinois. It's the same way with Massachusetts. Most people outside of Massachusetts just call us Boston. And that's probably what happened here is you probably had a bunch of people on the other side of the country that were making this movie. And they're just like, yeah, just slap a Boston police badge on a patch on the side of his jacket. Not even for a moment ever thinking, not even for a moment ever thinking that was a glaring inaccuracy. They should have picked like 5 people. Yeah, I saw the shoe. That's funny. That was funny. But yeah, they exactly. The Boston Police Department and Canton patches was funny to me. So inaccurate, exactly. But like I said, your general audience isn't going to notice this. But they should have got like 5 people, like Peter Murphy. They should have got Peter Murphy because like when they make military movies or police movies, they usually use people that are experts to talk about this stuff. And Peter Murphy would have been great because he's not only a Canton resident, but he's also a former police sergeant. He's also someone that's boots on the ground. In actuality, Peter Murphy really hits a lot of categories. He's that former cop in Canton. He's a Canton resident. He's someone that was a Karen Reed supporter. He was someone that was boots on the ground. Peter Murphy really checks maybe the most boxes of all of us. When you think about it, I can't think of anybody that checks off more boxes when it comes to knowing, or being a part of more or having more ties to things. He would have been someone that would have been great for them to have as a consultant to just, point out glaring inaccuracies, help them keep things more accurate. They could have used me. Maybe they could have used me. They could have used me for like one scene. They could have said, Mazza, we need you to consult on one scene. Is this Boston Garden? Is this the actual place where the Celtics and Bruins play? And I'll say, no, that building was torn down 30 years ago, and they have a new stadium. But also, that Karen Reed billboard that you're showing wasn't in Boston. It was in Foxborough near Gillette Stadium. So they could have used me. I could have been maybe like an expert to help out in that sense. So I'm like, that's like maybe the one thing that I could have contributed to the sports aspect of this movie. Would have been, they could have used me as like their sports expert. Been like, Mazza, can you help us out here? And it could have maybe just contacted Nick, who actually had the sign put up, and just say, Nick, is this where it was? And he's like, no, it was near Gillette. And also the Boston Garden was torn down 30 years ago. It's a new Boston Garden. Somebody literally Googled Boston Garden and they brought up a photo from 30 years ago. That's like bringing up the old Chicago Stadium where the Bulls play. Or, you know, God forbid they actually put up Foxborough Stadium instead of Gillette Stadium as well. But we need a sports consultant over at Lifetime to help them out. All right, moving along. This is our first shot of Paul O'Keefe, the brother of John O'Keefe. This is at the household here where Karen's walking in. She's meeting up with the family. And at this point, Karen, you know, who obviously sees herself as someone that had not done this, is now coming into a new reality where there's a lot of emotions here with the O'Keefe family. There's a lot of speculations that are in their initial stages that eventually manifest that into a full belief that Karen Reed did this. And you see Paul here portrayed in the movie. I thought this actor was pretty solid. I didn't think he had like, you know, Paul, I didn't think he had like when I see Paul in person, you know, he has more of like a football vibe to him physically. I thought this guy didn't really have that football vibe, in my opinion. I just thought he was like a generically cast actor who, you know, played the part. But but again, I'd say another actor that was serviceable for the role, sufficient for the role, just like the actor who played Bill Reed. I did not think this was a bad casting choice. I also didn't think that this was a wonderful casting choice. I just thought this was like a standard, you know, here's an actor to play Paul, portray Paul, kind of run you through his reactions, his perspective of the whole situation that took place. And I thought the actor overall was good enough. But this was kind of one of the real, especially for Karen, this was one of the real like shattering moments of everything, where this is now like the aftershock effect of what happened to John, where now she's believing that these people will see her as allies. And now all of a sudden she's finding out that they are seeing this from an opposite perspective, which is now they believe that Karen hit and killed John and was responsible for all of this. And this is essentially the last time that I'm aware of that they had any physical interaction in person outside the confines of the courthouse. But again, a scene that really brings home just the shifting of perspectives here. And Karen Reed starting to come to the new reality that people are starting to see her as a perpetrator and not the innocent woman that she sees herself in these particular moments. So I thought they did a solid job portraying this as well. You also see Peggy in this movie, who says, it looks like he was hit by a vehicle. To me, an ideology that most of us disagree with, an ideology that most of the folks, if not all the folks that are anti-Karen Reed, buy into as well. So we move along here. We're going to skip scenes because we already talked about, was it slide 41? I put both slides together from yesterday too. This was actually the next part where they show Peggy being consoled, and kind of with that, you know, in her mind now, the new ideology, the new mental focus that she believes Karen did this, and now believes that she's in the presence of Karen Reed having killed her very own son, which is an extremely uncomfortable moment for all involved. And then she utters the line, and this character utters the line, looks like he was hit by a vehicle to me. So we move forward here. This is yesterday's slide. I combined both slides just in case I wanted to. This is the end of yesterday's slide, the beginning of the new slide. I put this right in here too on purpose just to make sure I had a divider, so I remembered where I began and ended both slides, and if I needed to refer back to the slide. So we kind of ripped through. I was screenshotting these right up to the moment before the show, trying to get this in. So we transition here now to the reality of what the police are going to do about this and how they're going to handle the situation, taking a very big turn here, where Michael Proctor is now visiting Karen Reed and basically saying, we're taking the vehicle. Oh, by the way, we need your cell phone. And so again, in the previous scene, Karen's coming to the reality where she no longer has the support of the O'Keefes, but in the next scene, now realizing that the police are turning her into the suspect. Now, I thought this was an okay scene. I thought this actor of it in himself was a solid actor. I just didn't feel like when I watched these scenes that I'm looking at Michael Proctor. So that's why I'm kind of like, like I said, solid actor. Proctor performance, Proctor portrayal, not so good. But whatever. So this is not one of those new changes of reality scenes here for Karen, where she starts to see that these cops are coming after her as the primary suspect, the sole suspect for that matter. So again, an okay scene, overly dramatized. I don't even know what in this scene was even accurate or not, but there it was on the screen in the movie yesterday. But yeah, that's what I said too. Like I saw this actor would have been more of like a better Tully. A lot of people felt he could have played a Trooper Paul as well. I just didn't feel Proctor. But that's no knock on this actor's ability. All right, next up we have Karen Reed, who now is, one sec, solo cup time. We now have Karen Reed visiting David Yannetti. David Yannetti obviously was the first attorney for Karen Reed and was Karen Reed's attorney through all of this in her defense of her innocence. And we have Karen visiting David Yannetti and now starting to talk about what's going on here. And what I liked about this scene was they showed David Yannetti as someone that's really willing to stand by her the entire time, which was exactly what happened in real life. But I also liked the portrayal of Karen in this scene, where she, at this particular point, believes herself to be innocent, does not believe herself to be someone that intentfully hit and killed Officer John O'Keefe, but at this particular point is still asking questions. Did I hit him? Could I hit him? Had I hit him? She doesn't want to believe that, she did it. And as evidence would prove out, she did not. But at this point, they portray her and how I felt that, like, if this is how this conversation actually happened, whether it was in the office or by phone, I would believe at this point, Karen was probably in the stage of, I don't know if I did or not, because again, as time goes on, David Yannetti gets an anonymous call, which I was wondering if that call was actually going to happen when David Yannetti's office was called and he was going to get that anonymous tip that, hey, maybe you should start looking at the people inside that house. And your client didn't do this. And that never came into the movie at all. David Yannetti has been on record on camera talking about that call, but it was never portrayed in the movie. And I think that's just because, again, legalities, and that would have really taken the story into more of a manner that it's going to start to eye the McAlberts as suspects. And I don't think Lifetime, just from a legal sense, wanted to go that route in this movie. I think they wanted just to talk about Karen Reed being accused of murder, fighting for her innocence, and then ultimately being innocent. And I think that's the level that Lifetime wanted to keep this movie on and not go any further. But I did like this scene a bit. It kind of just established David Yannetti. Again, not our David Yannetti, not the David Yannetti we all know and love, but I felt this actor did a good enough job. Again, not poor, not great. They're not going to give this guy a Golden Globe for this movie, but he did a good enough job, I thought. And I thought Katie Cassidy in this scene did a good job of just transitioning from lover of John to shocked at what happened to John to now starting to quantify what the hell has happened here. What's happening to me? Why am I suddenly starting to be in a situation where people are saying I did this? I thought that was all good in this scene. Moving along here, this is where the movie starts to really hone in on Michael Proctor and really go in on factual texts that were actually said, that were actually read in court, and really get into what he talked about on those texts. They actually at one point actually show him texting, giving his physical critiquing of Karen and texting this, which was very unbecoming of an officer, obviously, which is later brought up in court later in the movie. They they end up addressing this particular matter. This was, at the very least, this was something that needed to be in the movie. Obviously, Lifetime could get away with putting this in this movie as a result of what's happened to Michael Proctor in real life and everything that's gone on with him that has been documented, that has all of that. They could definitely use that. I'm sure their legal team approved this, no problem at all. But again, this is one of the quintessential moments of this entire story as well, that eventually takes Michael Proctor from being in our opinion, obviously a no good investigator to now a disgraced investigator on a documented level, where he's actually writing these text messages that are later presented in court, which is ended up leading to his very public termination. So there we go. Next scene up, we have, this is now when they go to arrest Karen Read for the first time. She's taken into custody. David Dinetti had already forewarned her that this was going to happen, and now it happens. Now, this scene, like I said, when people say, is this movie good or bad or lackluster, the reason why I do give this movie some favorable credit was I did like the dramatization of the cops coming to the house, and you hear the police sirens in the background, and then the cops come to arrest her, because I thought that brought us into the reality of Karen, in a sense that Karen is in her house. She's hearing these police sirens. She knows they're coming for her, and just how shaking that must have felt, and how lonely that must have felt for her in this particular moment. And again, I thought this was another scene in which Katie Cassidy really captured Karen Read's reaction in first-person perspective very well. And like I said, when those police sirens start to show up and you hear them, it's like, oh, here they fucking come. Pardon my French. I know I shouldn't swear on my show, but that's when you start to say, oh, here they come. Here they come now. They're going to arrest her. And this is the moment of reality where they're coming after Karen now. They're going to pin it on the girl. Here it comes. And here we go. And, I just got to say to you that this was a scene that was like, oh boy, if it doesn't make you angry watching this, I don't know what does, folks. You know what I mean? Moving on, this kind of takes it to the next level. They show her arrest, but they actually show her in the police department now, getting ready to be booked. They later show her in her prison cell by herself. And this is just really, at this point, the lonely era of Karen Read in this entire saga, where it's her all on her own, now arrested, now in custody, now away from her family, now away from her friends, now believing these people are going to take her down and she's going to fight. And this is no doubt for Karen Read in all of this, even with John O'Keefe's death having happened, now that this is now being pinned on her, this has gone from her losing a boyfriend to her now facing, the outcome of this. And I thought the scene was necessary. It was pretty well done to a degree. Not great, obviously, but not bad, but a necessary scene to show you exactly what Karen Read went through, and also tell her full story of how she had to fight to get right on through to the end. Moving right along, I'm going to fast forward here through a couple scenes. I think they went to some backstory for a bit, so I just skipped ahead. This is now Karen Read's more infamous arrest. This is the second arrest. This is the one where she is not sufficiently clothed, where she is not happy with her appearance at this particular point, where they then come back for her and arrest her again. Obviously, some tape has come out as well that shows what the officers had to say walking up to the door. And then this is her second arrest at this particular point, which again was just very much looked like they were doing everything they could here to Karen Read, which again made me sick. I thought this was actually one of Katie Cassidy's best scenes in the whole movie, other than maybe her reaction to John O'Keefe. I thought that she really portrayed this scene very accurately based on what was on those tapes. And again, I thought she was, and yeah, good point. I thought the outfits throughout the movie were very well done to reflect the characters looking just like themselves. So again, I thought this was, a spot on scene for sure. All right, next up, we enter Turtleboy. It's Turtleboy time here. Now, I had a lot to say about this particular portrayal. They totally rewrote the reality of how Turtleboy came into this. They presented Turtleboy as someone that just happened to find out about this story and started to stream about it, as opposed to, him actually having been, in communication with Karen and then starting to talk about this story. This character, in my opinion, had the dialogue, as Turtleboy had said this last night. He thought the dialogue for his portrayal was spot on. I just did not. I was just somebody that did not like. I don't think the actor's bad. I don't think he's a bad person. I just didn't feel like this was Turtleboy. And even to some, the way he talked, the way he acted a little bit, I thought was just not. There's going to be some edge to the character, and I didn't think there was enough edge. I just thought he was like, "Hey, I'm live, and look what they're doing to Karen Reed." I didn't think it was like, the Turtleboy we all know is kind of like, going to have a level of rebellion to him, an edge, just some roughness to him. Your typical Massachusetts guy. He's just kind of like, "Hey, this is Turtleboy, and oh my goodness, what's going on here?" And then the chat. I saw some. I think Kyle Sharkey posted the chat on Twitter, and the chat here is extremely tame. It's extremely tame for us. We're not that tame. All of us, whether it's even in Turtleboy's chat or other chats, we all have a level of roughness to all of us. Yeah, someone goes, "Yeah, it's also a lifetime." Exactly. It's like people are in the comments like, "Yeah, Karen Reed didn't do it. I'm waiting for more clarity." Yeah, it's like, you ever been in Turtleboy's chat? You ever been in any other chat for any other show? It's not this tame. I did like, they had the hat. I like that. I like the headset. I like the hoodie. Those were all good things. And I think that was good. But the actor physically was not Aiden. He's too tall. He's too lanky. He doesn't have the muscle. Those were things I thought were, you got to have the muscle. Aiden hits the gym. This guy looks like he's never hit the gym a day in his life. It's just, somebody called him Ozempic Turtleboy, I saw online. But yeah, this is not our Turtleboy. We wanted to see a more edgy portrayal. Lifetime kind of toned it down. Someone called in Turtleboy's show last night and actually said, "I thought the guy looked like a geek or a nerd," I think. But I would say this: I thought that the Turtleboy portrayal was in this movie a lot more than I expected. I thought maybe it'd be like maybe one or two scenes in passing where maybe they have like Karen and her team be like, "Oh, this is really picking up on social media." And maybe they show like a clip of him, online. I didn't expect that, there was going to be maybe 4 or 5 scenes like that. But also, we'll get to this in a little. Actually, I'll save that all for later. We'll just talk about the online stuff because I have other clips too. But I didn't expect the character to have more than maybe like, I would say like at least one scene, maybe 2 to 3, 4 bit scenes tops. And I didn't think it was going to, I thought it was maybe like 6 or 7 scenes. And some of those scenes were 20, 30 seconds with some dialogue. So they had him in there. Again, I think they should have picked an act. Like I said, I thought the actor got a lot of Aiden's key points in there that he said on his show, but I didn't think that they had, again, like the aura, the attitude, like Aiden's got attitude. He's got some edge, this guy, I think, seemed like, he sits in the front of the classroom, whatever. I just know. It just didn't feel like Aiden to me. But again, I think it's necessary to have the character in the movie. Again, they didn't portray it how I would have done it, but I think that this is a good, Aiden's kind of like the pivot character between Karen and the movement, where he's kind of the guy that brings it to social media. It blows up. Then you start to have the supporters. So he's really and I don't, that pivot is not a negative term. Pivot's kind of like he's the bridge character in all of this saga, where it's Karen Reitz, then it's Aiden, then it's the movement. It kind of all connects just like that. And he kind of is the one that brings it to social media. The articles come out, the videos come out, those pick up steam. More content creators like myself start to come in the fold. Boots on the ground starts to emerge, all that stuff. Exactly. So that's exactly how it all kind of comes to be. So he was definitely a necessary character. Again, I thought the portrayal could have been better. And, I just said it's not the turn. Like when we look at Karen, I say, okay, it's a sufficient actor. When I look at this guy, and say, okay, he played the role, he gets the point across, but he's not, it's not a spot on Turtleboy. Next up, we enter Alan Jackson. So eventually what happens here is Karen does some research, finds out Michael Proctor's ties, lets David Yannetti know about it, and then they realize we need to get, we're going to need a bigger cave, basically, like Alfred said at the end of one of the Batman movies. We're going to need, we're going to need to up this here. Having David Yannetti was great, but at this point, this was a situation that was a lot more in depth. It's like, when Turtleboy got better, it's good to have one attorney, but you need two. This was the same situation here. The story was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually, having someone like Alan Jackson, who had previously represented Kevin Spacey, was going to come in. And they had him come in. And this actor, again, was okay. Again, not the Alan Jackson we know. They kind of got the hair. They got the hair. He's a passable Alan Jackson. Some people said that he wasn't truly Alan Jackson with the swagger. I agree. But I thought that, again, a lot of passable performances in this, serviceable. Again, looking at it at what it is, it's a made-for-TV Lifetime movie. It's not going to be, again, The Godfather. But I thought this guy was all right. I'll get to his performance in the courtroom later in the movie. But I did like how they brought in the, they introduced him into the movie. Like, we're going to need Alan Jackson. What I did not like, obviously, was our biggest fears yesterday were confirmed. Eliza Little was not in this movie. And that was tough to see, not having Eliza Little in this movie at all, which was tough. Would have liked to have seen her. All right. Next up, Turtleboy here again. I think I'm just going to skip this because this is kind of really a similar scene to the one I already had. So we'll just skip this. This is just kind of a way of introducing the fact that Turtleboy is active at this point. He's doing multiple shows. It's continuing to pick up steam. So they kind of started to put these scenes in the movie to kind of bring that up as it's going. So we'll skip there. This is what I want to get to here. So the Rolling Rally actually made the movie, which was which I didn't expect. Even if they did portray Turtleboy, I didn't expect that they would actually portray the Rolling Rally. And I have to admit, I laughed out loud and went right to Twitter and wrote about it when this happened, because I was laughing my ass off at this scene. It was so funny. They had him in the car. They show him like live. You see the chat. I don't think he was actually live that I recall. I can't remember, but they actually have the live chat in the lower left-hand corner, and you just see him drive around. It's like, we're just being peaceful. We're just being peaceful. It was funny. It was funny. But again, I thought this actor was a little, he was not, just a little too thin, little too, it's just not our Aiden. But the scene was nonetheless hilarious. It almost felt like a Saturday Night Live type of scene portraying Aiden here. But yeah, it was an absolute riot watching the Rolling Rally, because it caught me by surprise, because I figured at most they would show, as we saw in the trailer, they'd show Aiden doing shows like that. We knew. I figured possibly they might show him outside the courthouse or potentially inside the courthouse. But I did not expect that they'd actually show the Rolling Rally. And that had me laughing so hard. I just could not stop laughing for the longest time. It was just so funny. The way the character was moving in the car and he's looking around. He's like, we're just being peaceful. We're just driving around. And the Rolling Rally is kind of just it was a moment in time that just was always forever talked about. And it's one thing when you look at the charges they threw on Aiden that never, he did live stream the Rolling Rally. Okay. Thanks, Suze. I forget about that. I think I was maybe just starting to get into it right around that time, or if I hadn't been watching as much yet. So I think that's why I don't have the full recollection. But yeah, I didn't expect that. I was just like, what? This is in the movie? Are you kidding me? They just show him driving around. He's like moving his head around in the car. Oh, that was funny. That was pretty funny. All right, moving along. The Lifetime movie kind of gets back into the Lifetime movie aspect of it again, where it's basically back to romance. I think we're in love. Karen, blast from the past. They start doing that whole aspect of it again here. she's got a drink in her hand. He looks like he has a Heineken or something. They're on the couch. They're together. They're alone. This is like the big gushing scene for all the Lifetime viewers. Like, they're in love. Oh, that's kind of what Lifetime's going for here. And this is kind of really where I started to check out of the movie for a couple minutes. I'm just like, because I'm in this for like the true crime, the controversies, the cover-ups, the criminal drama. I'm not really into this for slow, dim light, romantic music and drinks and all that stuff. I'm not like looking to watch that. I'm just like, I don't, let's just get to the other stuff. But they did like flashback stories. But I think this is good though, in a sense that it does show their connection. It shows you that they were in love. It does do that. Glamasuz says that one of the things she didn't like, and I've heard this said many times, that alcohol was in nearly every scene that had John and Karen, and that irritated her. That was a collectively agreed upon notion that I saw quite a bit as well. And, all that. So that was, again, I think this was good just to kind of do show that they had a good relationship. And I think it also plays favorably to Karen in a sense that it doesn't show that she was eventually had any intent of running this man over, even though another scene does happen that, the prosecution would later use to try to bring that home. So again, a filler scene. I think I kind of walked out of the room for a minute to refresh my seltzer water probably at that point, or get more food. All right, moving along. Chicken wings. Chicken wings made the movie, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, that is correct. The chicken wings made the movie. I did not expect that. If I wanted to, I could be like, well, this is a nod to MazzaMedia. But I doubt it was. But if I wanted to just be like, yes, chicken wings made the movie, that's a nod to me. No, I'm just kidding. But no, they had chicken wings in the movie. I didn't think this was a good scene. They showed two brothers watching the game. They kind of showed you Paul and John's brotherly relationship here, kicking back, having some beers, eating some wings, grabbing some snacks. Because again, whether we agreed with Paul's viewpoint of Karen, at the end of the day, this was his brother. And I'm sure that they always had some good brotherly moments as well. But I kind of like this kickback football scene here with the chicken wings because, I like chicken wings. Everybody knows that. I love football. I got to get the score update on the Bills and Jags soon. I'm going to watch that game soon. But yeah, I kind of like the chicken wings being in the movie and then it kind of establishing, oh yeah, right, exactly. Just all that went down there. So yeah, and Turtleboy didn't drink coffee. That's another thing I want to talk about. Like, I don't remember ever seeing Turtleboy drink, not that I have a clip of that, but they showed 7-3 Jaguars. Okay. That's going to be a tight game. Like, Turtleboy's in the chat, but I don't recall ever seeing Turtleboy drinking coffee. Maybe he has, maybe he's in the chat. Maybe he can let us know, but usually he has the mug that he drinks from, but I don't usually see him drinking coffee. Like, I've seen the glare with the coffee pot, but I was like, they got him with the coffee. I'm like, yeah, was it ice? Was he have iced coffee? Oh, he says, I drink it in the morning, iced coffee only at night. Gotcha. Okay, cool. All right. That I did not pick up on. That kind of threw me. And he drinks iced coffee. Gotcha. Okay. That's what I was wondering about because they had the coffee glass. And then I know Aiden was on his stream. When you were on your stream last night, Aiden, you had talked that you had drinking coffee before. But for me, I'm like, wait, I'm used to the mug. So I don't get to watch the morning shows when I'm working, but I usually watch the evening. All right, we'll move forward. So Aiden in the movie, again, the rolling rally, that's a surprise appearance. I think this is kind of really like an early indication that the movement's starting to really start establishing itself in innocence, in protest of Karen Reed's innocence. Then we get to that. Then we get to this. Okay, now we get to the Sullivan. Aiden liked this portrayal. He says, yeah, I thought the portrayal of you was done well in context, meaning like things you said, things you did, but I thought like physically the actor, I just didn't think was like, I didn't think he had like your character enough of your characteristics to make us feel like that was you. But I think that's kind of how I took it. But then they had the Sullivans in here. This is another scene I didn't expect. I didn't expect the Aruba portion of this to be in here, and if it happened, I thought maybe it would be in passing, and it did not happen that way. It happened kind of in an actual scene. There was an actual scene. They actually showed the sister, one of the sisters here. Yeah, exactly. It is Lifetime. Exactly. It is Lifetime at the end of the day. I mean, for goodness sakes, they had Auntie Bev with the wig on. and Lucky Lochran with hair, for goodness sakes. Great point. But yeah, they had the Sullivan sisters here. And this is really where the Lifetime movie really gets into its relationship drama dynamics, where they're showing that Karen and John's relationship starts to get a little rocky here. And this was something, obviously, the prosecution exploited. You know, so I see someone said no Higgy. I do believe he's in this. Hold on. Let me go back. He's 1 second here. If you look in this image right here at the waterfall, if you look at where Brian Albert is in the front center, if you look just to his right, there's a guy next to him with a hoodie that has more of like a physique. I think that's supposed to be Higgins. That's what I think. So that's my take on that. I think that might have been Higgins in the movie, potentially. But that's all I got for you. All right, let's move forward back to the beginning here. Back to where we left off. Let's see. Sullivan's. We'll get to Auntie Bev in a minute. So yeah, they got this in the movie. Then they show Karen seeing that, reacting to that. Obviously, the prosecution tries to exploit that, and it does not, it does not pan out in a conviction. Yeah, no, I honestly, I didn't even notice it till I was doing this show. When I took that screenshot, I didn't notice it either. It wasn't until I was actually live on this show earlier going through it that I said, wait a second, maybe that's Higgins potentially there. You know, and he was next to Brian that night, so that's foreseeably they snuck him in. They also snuck in Janet. We'll get to that too. It's one of the, it's tough to notice all this stuff when you watch it the first time too. It's when you watch it, you're not even sure, and then you go back and say, well, maybe that's that person, maybe that's that person. So again, the Sullivans are here, at least one of them, and she was on the stand in the first trial, and then they kind of established some relationship mistrust there with Karen. All right. With John and Karen. All right, let me get a quick drink of water. And then I'm going to get going here with this. So this is Proctor on the stand. Now, this is where we see Judge Beverly Cannone, I believe, for the first time in this movie. And this actor does have her facial posture down perfect. And she does have her physical posture down perfect. Now, the only thing about this that's wrong, or not wrong in a bad sense, but inaccurate, is that Auntie Bev, at least that we know, I'm not making any suggestions. I think it's her real hair. But Auntie Bev actually has a wig on in this particular scene, which is a riot. But yeah, this actress, I even posted on Twitter last night. She was too nice. So we got 7 Bills 3. Yeah, she was nicer than real life. Like she was like the nice version of Judge Beverly Cannone. She's like, would you like fries with that? Would anybody like to have a glass of water? Does anybody want to take a lunch break? Oh, Mr. Alan Jackson, I love you so much. Mr. Unetti, you're too kind. Thank you. She was kind of nice the whole movie. Or all the scenes she was in, she was nice. But she wasn't like the rude Judge Beverly Cannone that was getting into it with Alan Jackson, getting on David Unetti, eventually going after, treating Eliza Little like she's 5 years old, getting into it with Bob Alessi. She was like the nicer version, tame version of Judge Beverly Cannone. And, that's pretty much how she was portrayed. I thought the actress did a good enough job. It's like they just didn't want to get into that because that's kind of, for us, that's how we see it. I guess they just didn't want to get into the fact that it looks like they wanted to stay away from controversial angles, meaning like a judge that has a side, a judge that's not biased, kind of in that aspect. Yeah, no sighs. There were no sighs. There were no, Mr. David Unetti. They got away from all that. So, yeah. But I thought physically her posture, like when I see her facial features, her facial structure, the way she's looking, the way she's angling her head, that's a spot-on Beverly Cannone posture right there. It truly is. No question about it. So I thought I thought the actress, for what she was allowed to portray on camera, did a good job. I did. I just don't think that they, from a production, writing, and story standpoint, really showed her the way we all know her, in a sense that she's very, was very rude and very mean at times. She wasn't like your nice, like, the aunt that you like. She was not bad. But the actress overall, I thought, did a good job. The court scenes here, but I thought this was a pretty solid scene. This was where Proctor was on the stand, and he was crossing Michael Proctor, and he did a good job. Like they did a good job, like going after. And that's what they kind of focused on in this movie, was just basically Proctor's bad. Proctor can't be trusted. They ignored everything else, went honed in on Proctor for this story, and I thought they did a good job with this scene. Again, the portrayal of Alan Jackson was not perfect, not what we'd like, but they did get to where we'd like to see it, at least, where they got the dialogue in there that we wanted to see, which was, you know, him really crossing Michael Proctor, picking him apart, you know, digging right into him, and getting that all on camera, which I thought was very good for audiences that aren't familiar with this, that even though they didn't get into the cover up, the framing to the level, to any level really, that was, we thought was sufficient, but they did get enough on camera that if you're someone that hasn't heard of this story before, that was watching this movie last night, that this might be something to spike your interest to start researching this story more. And I thought this scene did a good job at that. It was good enough. It hit on what was needed to do that. So I thought that was good in that respect as well. So good there. And I thought the courtroom scenes were pretty not great, but good enough. You know, this is Adam Lally. So they had Adam Lally in this movie, and believe it or not, Adam Lally actually looks like he hits the gym every day at 5 o'clock. He actually looks like he's talked to women before. And he actually looks like he's a competent prosecutor, which is definitely a far cry from the Adam Lally that we all know in real life. That is more like lackadaisical Lally. That's just what if anything, who if anything, where if anyone. But yeah, he got to say what if anything, where if anyone, whatever he said on the screen. I jumped out of my chair and was like, yes, he said the line. He just said the line. This is perfect. I was laughing. I was rolling last night because, you know, even though it's, you know, someone that's our adversary, or you know, he's our opposition. He's the guy that doesn't agree with us. He's trying to put Karen behind bars. At the same time, though, it's funny that, you know, to see him on camera, because we've just come to know the guy. We've seen the guy in person, most of us have. And it was just like, he said it. He said the thing. He did it. It was a riot. It was a riot just hearing him say, what if anything. Good on them for actually having that in the movie, I got to say. I was happy they put that in there. For us, that's what we wanted to see. But also it's an accurate portrayal because he said it constantly. And obviously Lifetime picked up on that. And I thought that was fantastic. I thought that was one of the funniest aspects of this movie last night. Again, this is a competent version of Lally. The Lally version that we know is more like roll out of bed, throw on a suit, mosey on into court, rip a few butts. This guy looks like, again, he gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning. He hits the gym. He freshly squeezes his own orange juice. He eats 3 eggs. He cooks bacon every morning. He then pumps iron. He then goes on the computer to prep for the day. You know, he steals your girl. That's the kind of Lally they had in the movie here. But no, this is funny. It was funny overall. So that's Lally. This is Trooper Paul, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I believe this was Trooper Paul in the movie. It just did. I used a microscope. But they had, Trooper Paul in the movie here. Ripping butts. Yeah. Rippled shirts and baby shark hair. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this was Trooper Paul in the movie. And again, kind of a brief scene for him. But Trooper Paul. Yeah, Trooper Paul. But yeah, they had him in the movie as well. Again, they kind of, during this scene, got a lot of people on screen. You saw Lucky Loughran. You saw Julie Nagel. Julie Nagel was in this scene as well as they cut through examinations, direct and cross, and started to show, them saying, they're talking about black blobs, and they had Lucky Loughran with hair, which was funny. But yeah, they got through all of this as well throughout the movie. I'll skip through here. Then we have Turtleboy outside rallying again. And I think this scene might be quite inaccurate because I think this is during the first trial, obviously, but yet that was summertime and it was June and it was hot. Yet everybody's rocking long sleeve shirts. Everybody's rocking hoodies. It looks like one of the trees in the background has no leaves. And everybody's kind of like looking like they're chilling in 65 degree, 60, 65 degree temperature, which was pretty funny. But yeah, they had him out there and rallying the troops, the Free Karen Reed troops, everybody with their signs. But yeah, that was another funny scene as well. Just seeing everybody with, like, again, long sleeve shirts, pants on, all that good stuff. That was funny. But it was funny seeing all this. I mean, they do what they can. It's, like I said, it's a small, low budget, independent movie on Lifetime. It is what it is. It's not the Oscars, but to some degree, they're portraying everybody. They're portraying Turtleboy. They're portraying Karen Reed supporters, which is good. But yeah, it's funny. Really funny stuff right there. Just to see us all. Again, they're representing us. I mean, this is representing all of us. If you were out there with a sign, that's essentially you holding that sign back there, But that's funny. All right, moving along, we got Jen McCabe on the stand. So they show her during the first trial. They show her twice during this. They show her 2 days worth of trials. And again, wardrobe, they pretty much nail it both times in a row. This actress, again, great portrayal of Jen. Really had her mannerisms down as well, how she conveyed herself on the stand during that first trial. Very, very rough with Jackson during that first trial as well, more particularly in the first trial. Yeah, they had that going. But I thought this was one of the characters that was one of the better portrayed characters in the whole movie. They had an actress, I thought, that did a good job portraying her. And, for these actors, there's more than enough material to go off of. I mean, these actors can sit down and watch YouTube videos of the trial all day and really get down the mannerisms, really start to practice, off of what they're listening to, which actors typically do. It's not like they're just reading a book and trying to portray characters. They have more than enough video data to do that, which was good. So, again, I thought this actress really nailed the mannerisms and did a good job with her performance. And really, they honed in on the Google search, which came up. How long to die in cold came up in this movie. So that was kind of really the two things they went into, was Michael Proctor's, the sins of Michael Proctor, and then the Google search as well, which came into the movie. And that's about as far as they went with cover-up theories, anything they thought Jen might have done. Like, none of that was really, it was just kind of the Google search that went into this movie. But again, I thought, like I said, it was a swing at the bat worth of effort here, one at bat worth of effort. I think they did, like I said, a good enough job. There's a lot of, the facts, the details that weren't in there. Some things they got wrong, obviously. But like I said, for a Lifetime movie, I give it a 7. For an actual movie, 4.5. But I think that they, I would say just watch it. I would just watch it, because there's some things you're just going to laugh at, and plus so many of us are talking about it that, it's good to be in the know too. I would recommend just watching it, especially when you've watched Karen Reed's story for so long. It's just kind of funny to see, funny not in a hilarious way, but funny just in kind of like a, holy crap, they actually made a movie about this way. It was fun. I mean, it was, like I said, last night I kind of made a party out of it a little bit. I had all kinds of food going, was pumped up, 2 TVs going, all that stuff. It was, like I said, we've all been waiting for a long time to actually see a movie about this, and we actually did. So I expect the other version with Elizabeth Banks to be much better. I thought this was okay. I thought this was again, they did what they could within an hour and a half. Moving along. This is Alan Jackson speaking to the jury. I'm not sure if Ronnie the juror actually made it in this movie or not, but they kind of portrayed Lally and Jackson kind of making their closing arguments. This courtroom was really good, I thought. And I thought that they did a good job trying to make it look as similar. I mean, this is pretty much like 85% accurate in terms of how it. Now, I'm not talking down to the detail. I mean, like, just like at a base level. Like, it's 85% passable as well. So I thought they did a good job with this scene. The courtroom looks fairly accurate. You got Lally in his right seat. You got Madam Court Reporter with the piece, the talking point up to her mouth back there. Not our Madam Court Reporter. Then you get Judge Beverly Cannoni on her high horse back there. You got the jury in the right place. Unetti's sitting back there. So it was good. It was good in that sense. They did what they could. All right, next up, Janet Reed. There you go. Janet Reed made the movie, ladies and gentlemen. If you needed any evidence, I know Sarah B. Creative, you were asking about this earlier. There you go. There was Janet Reed. They got the hair color wrong. Janet has more of like a dark brownish reddish hair color. And she has more of a blonde hair here. But yes, the courtroom set wasn't bad. They did try. Exactly. But yeah, they did get Janet in there. Maybe that's the glare. If he was 20 years older with glasses sitting behind Bill Reed, perhaps. But yeah, this was and they got this accurate too, like 2 rows of seats, which was good. Like that's all it was. It was very confined in there, and they got that all touched up pretty nicely. Yeah, I know. That's what I said. Is that glare in the back? Is that glare in the back? That's what I say too. It's funny. But yeah, it's Janet Reed was in it. I was looking for her all night long in the movie, and finally she started to make appearances in the courtroom scenes, and we didn't get to hear any dialogue from her. I thought maybe they were going to have some scenes for Janet, but they did not, which was kind of disappointing. I think that maybe if they had a bigger budget, they could have got an actress that had some dialogue scenes, but they did not. Looks like I got about 5 more minutes here. Nurse Kim and Emily C are going live at 2:05. I just checked them. They were getting ready to go live at 2. I was just double checking their start time to see if it was still 2. It got pushed to 2:05. So we'll take 5 more minutes before we wrap up. I don't have this forwarded to go to that stream. Mods, if you can grab, it's Emily C's show, not Nurse Kim's show, I think. If you can just track that down and post that link in the chat, because a lot of us are going to be watching that as well. But yes, Janet Reed made it. I'm just going to wrap up here with the 5 minutes I got. I want to just clear the air for them. Just kind of pass the baton over to them. And make sure you guys write MazzaMedia when you go over there. All right. Yeah, Janet made it. Bill made it. Like I said, good enough. The hair color for Janet's not right, but they could have touched that up a little bit. But good. I like how they're close. I like their reactions here. Bill and Janet were always concerned about everything. So we'll move on here. This is Karen coming out of court at the end of the first trial. Now you start to see people in short sleeve shirts. Karen taking pictures with her fans, which was good. Kind of a good atmosphere outside after the first trial, even though it was kind of a mixed reaction. It was actually downpouring rain at one point, dark clouds, thunder and lightning, all that good stuff. And then they have Paul come out with Peggy. And he's like, all you people, you don't believe what you believe. You're all wrong. He kind of was like that. They had portrayed him as, which I don't think that even happened in real life. This is just movie portrayal here. And then, that's pretty much all they did with this scene, was just basically have him come out, confront all the supporters as Karen Reed gets in her vehicle. Karen Reed then finds out from her father that they're going to retry it, which we ended up finding out fairly soon after. Yeah, the men outnumbered the female supporters for some reason in this movie as well, which is highly inaccurate. I think we're about 80% women. And then Karen Reed got in her vehicle. She has her flowers. Her father, is texting her, calling her to say they're going to retry it. And then we move on to the second trial, where we have the head jury foreman, who we saw in a lot of interviews, come out and declare her not guilty on 2 of the charges, guilty on DUI. I like how they went right to the second trial at the end. So most of the movie was about the first trial. Then they kind of just cut to the conclusion of the second trial to convey how it all ends. Looks like we have the stream for Emily C coming up in 3 minutes as well. So we can all transition over there to hear Nurse Kim and her reaction. And someone's commenting that they think this jury foreman was much better looking than the guy here. Everyone has their opinion. That's funny. Thank you so much, Mermaid. I appreciate that. So make sure I get through all my slides here. 1 second. Okay, I got 2 more. Okay, good. This was a funny scene at the end where they show Turtleboy out front when Turtleboy was actually in the courtroom when it happened. So the second trial, they show him waiting for Karen to come out. He's outside streaming, but they didn't realize that Aiden was actually, he had a journalistic badge, and he was actually in the courtroom, and then comes out before Karen does, and does the big pose. They have him outside with a hat on, And he's just like, oh, is that Karen? Oh, Karen's coming out. It's like, come on, Lifetime. Make it accurate. You got to have him come outside the courtroom. Like, these are the little things you got to get right. These are little things that are on camera. Turtleboy was not outside. He was inside. He came out. He was there when the verdict was read. Instead, he's like, oh, is Karen coming out? The actor's like, oh, is Karen coming out? Is Karen coming out? It's like, nope, that's not what happened. He was inside, and he comes out like this, with his arms in the air. But that kind of cracked me up a little bit because, again, we know it's accurate. Sometimes these little inaccuracies come up. But I did like all the people out there that they had celebrating as well. And then in the end, Karen Reed walks out, a free woman. Karen Reed is now free. Aiden just said here, this scene was, go back. This scene was wild. Like they made it all about me after the verdict. That's funny. But yes, they had Aiden outside. They didn't have John DePietro getting booed or John DePietro getting booed, which was unfortunate. But again, they had their celebration. Karen comes out. Karen Reed's free. It's all over. And, that's kind of the end of it. It's this chapter in this saga ends, and we transition into civil suits now. And that's a wrap. Karen Reed is free. Will never go to jail. 1 year's probation for a DUI, which is pretty much over in about 5 months, which is great for her. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to donate to Karen Reed's Civil Defense Fund, that is in the description. If you'd like to donate to Turtleboy's Defense Fund, that is in the description. If you'd like to donate to Kelsey Fitzsimmons, who I'll be doing a fundraiser for next week, her defense fund, GiveSendGo, is in the description as well. Right now, Emily C. is going to be on live on YouTube with Nurse Kim. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to MazzaMedia. This is our live show. I'm going to watch Emily C. and Nurse Kim on my phone and start catching the football game and get ready to make some food here and have a good afternoon. It was a fun night last night. We enjoyed ourselves. It was nice to see a movie about this. But at the end of the day, we'll end up looking forward to the Elizabeth Banks movie. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Please like the video. Please subscribe. And go watch Emily C. in the football game. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great afternoon from MazzaMedia. I'm Mark. Take care, ladies and gentlemen. Goodbye.